G'day, Ben from Duck Playing Chicken here with a new build series. This time we're in the Round Vernian Vifam universe, and this is a fairly recent box set of repop of old kits from the 80s. Now there's actually two of these sets by Bandai. There's set 1, set 2, and they have various mecha from the series. So set 1, you have the Dilfarm, the Vifam with the sling pannier, the Were puppet all over, which I reckon is one of the best names for a mecha ever. And then we have the Astrogator WUG. So everyone needs a good WUG. And that's what I'm actually going to be building. So this is going to be an exercise in taking an older style kit and trying to modernise it a bit and see what sort of modifications I can make to it to make it easier to paint and maybe give it a little bit more posability, just try and modernise it a little bit. So I will eventually get around to building all 4 of these, but I'm going to start with the WUG first. Now, just a little bit of information about this box set. I managed to pick this up for about $35 Australian, so they're still sort of available and they're reasonably cheap. And I reckon 35 bucks for 4 older kits is pretty good. So, if we open up the box, I'm not going to go through the box in too much detail, but basically you get all the sprues. There's a few sheets of decals, but you get it all in one box. So all I'm going to concentrate on today is just the stuff for the WUG. Okay, now I suspect that Bandai have done some work on these molds since the 80s because there's really clean lines on the details here. I could be wrong, but I suspect that there's been some work done. So yeah, all the details really crisp. So there's basically just the one styrene sprue for the WUG, and you also get a sprue of polycaps. I believe these kits were sort of the first to come out with polycaps. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think they're sort of at least one of the earliest sorts of series of kits where they introduced polycaps. Now, the great thing about these sprues is we should be able to break them here and here and here, so they're not all sitting on one big massive sprue. It makes it a bit more difficult to pull apart. And of course these would have originally been boxed in a something like that, so they would have been in a smaller box. Now we get the instructions, which covers all 4 kits. Obviously one we're interested in is the WUG at the end of the sheet. So the instructions pretty straightforward. The good thing about this repop too is that they have included English translations for some of the details, so that's a nice touch. The one thing I wish they would have done is, I know the original sets had these sort of files on the mecha. They were just like cardboard things with a couple of holes punched in them, and they had sort of some details about the different mech in the series. Would have been nice if they'd sort of included those in the repop, but they haven't. So all we've got to deal with is some modernised instructions, or at least some updated instructions, and maybe some updated plastic. Alright, so the next step is for me to start removing parts from sprues and start looking at ways that we can sort of modernise this kit. Alright, I've started sort of testing how pieces fit and throwing around a few ideas of how I'm going to make this kit a little bit better. Some things I didn't mention before. First of all, the scale. It's 1/144th scale, and also this is not just a snap together kit. You will need glue for this, so hence why I've got the tape on the 2 arms here which I've built. So I want to show you this arm first, and the joints are interesting. They're sort of the time, I guess. Polycaps have been used, but not for all joints. So there's sort of this interesting shoulder. I'll take this piece off. There's sort of this shoulder mechanism here that's limited back one way, and it kind of swivels, but it's a bit rough. Now this is actually made up of 3 pieces, and I think I'll end up replacing this joint. I think this is going to be sort of too problematic the other thing too is they do give you a hand with the weapon on it, which is nice, and then a hand without. So you can just plug them in, and that is a polycap joint that's in there. So that's kind of nice. They've given you those options there. Now, where it becomes really kind of problematic is the limitation of this arm. So sure, the shoulder's going to rotate, but the arm is sort of doesn't have a lot of range of motion at the elbow, and I want to do something about that. I want to try and get it so that we can get a better bend in here, because at the moment it's really limited, and it means I'm not going to be able to get the pose I sort of want, where I want the gun sort of resting on the other arm and making it look, trying to make it look natural. So let's have a look at the rest of the structure, and then I can talk about some of the things I want to do. So let's start with this top, the upper arm. I'll remove the tape here, and that way you can start to see the anatomy of how these kits sort of come together, or how they fall apart. Alright, so let's get this together first. So this is the hinge mechanism, and you can see the split there between the two bits, and it's just got this little round flange here that rotates sort of in this gap here. So the other thing is there's this bit that sits on the peg, but it's sort of separate and doesn't want to swivel, and I'm not really that happy about that. So I think this whole sort of joint in here is going to need some serious work. So again, everything's 2 halves, which, you know, is fine. There's going to be a bit of cleanup. Well, there's going to be a lot of cleanup, but that's all right. I don't mind doing that. That's part of the charm of these kits. Alright, this is giving me grief and coming apart. There's the polycap that sits in there that holds the arm. And then you can see here, there's this piece, and it's got a rectangular shaft there, so it's not actually supposed to sort of rotate. It's supposed to sit in there and stay there, which I'm not too happy about. It'd be nice if there was a little bit of rotational movement allowed there. And of course, the other thing is that this whole elbow kind of part is part of the lower arm, so there's absolutely no movement there. So I want to do some modifications to this to make it a lot better for posability. Alright, so that's sort of all that. Now, I've got a number of challenges ahead, including how I'm going to do the elbow, but I've decided to sort of start from the bottom of the arm. So I'm going to start from the weapon and the hands. Now, this hand is pretty good. It's got a sink mark in the middle there, so I am going to fix that with a bit of putty. The detail on the hands is actually pretty good. There's, you know, there are some mold lines in there and that need to be cleaned up, but the hand sculpt is actually pretty good. It's pretty clean. You know, it hasn't gone sort of soft, and like I mentioned before, I think Bandai have probably done some work on the molds, or the molds were in really good condition, so that yeah, the detail's still pretty sharp, which is good. For the weapon, I'll open this up. This again, it's 2 halves, and I've already sort of started just a little bit of work, and it was really just to get some black in here. So I just used some black paint to sort of paint in there. I started off doing that because when you've got the 2 halves together, you can sort of see down in there a little bit. So I just wanted to make sure that was black. But then, of course, you know, I started going down the rabbit hole of, oh, maybe I could light this kit, you know, because geez, I haven't done that for quite some time. So I am going to end up lighting this kit. I thought this would be a nice simple one, but no. No, of course not. This is duck plain chicken, where, you know, the silly duck is actually just obsessed with lighting everything. So I've got some 3mm LEDs here. Let's get one of these out. Alright, so this is just a blue one. I haven't decided on the colour yet. I'll have to go back and watch the anime, find that somewhere. But I think if I can sort of sit that in there somehow, and then I will run a wire sort of through the guts here and into the post of the hand. Now, because the hands are, you can swap them out, it'd be nice if I could set it up so that, I could either have the gun hand or the other hand attached and I don't have to worry about wires sort of going everywhere. So that's where I'm going to use these things, or at least I'm going to give it a shot. So these are pogo pin connectors, if it'll focus. And you can sort of see there's two terminals. There's sort of one in the middle and one on the outer rim, and there's just magnets and they snap together. So I've used these before in other projects where I've wanted to be able to disconnect a part but still have power flow to it when I put it back on. So I reckon I might be able to get one of these pogo pin connectors sort of attached as part of the hand peg. Now the peg for the hands are actually about 4mm, so I'm not quite sure I'm going to do that. I might see if I can find a bit of plastic tube or something that will replace the replace this part of the hand peg, because I think that hand peg is going to be too small. And of course, whatever I do here, I'll need to do the same here. So this one will also have a pogo pin connector. The only difference is it won't have any power or anything going on in it. It's just a way to, magnetize it and get it into the arm socket. So that's sort of the plan. As far as the lighting goes, there's a few other bits and pieces I want to sort of do with the kit. So obviously with the gun, I don't want the light just on all the time. Now I could make a small flashing circuit with a capacitor or a 555 timer chip, but I think what I'll end up doing is I'll actually use a small Arduino board. So this is a Seed by Zhao, I think it is, and this is the sort of body of the WUG. And I reckon I could get the board in here. It actually fits beautifully. So that's sort of, I'm just brainstorming at the moment. Whether it actually works out that way or not is another thing, but sort of throwing around ideas. But I do want to get the lighting in the gun sort of sorted, and then I can sort of start working on the elbow joint and work down the line, I think. Alright, I made a little bit of progress here. I've actually changed the types of pogo pins I'm using. They're still the magnetic ones, but they're a bit bigger. These are 5mm. And the reason for that is because the styrene tube that I've got, it's got a 5mm interior diameter, so internal diameter, so they fit in there quite snug. So I haven't needed the smaller ones after all. So the plan is we've got just a yellow LED solder at one end, and on the other end we've got the pogo pin magnetic connector. So now I need to get this styrene piece over here, and you can see I've drilled out the peg and also cut it off so it's a bit shorter. I've done the same thing on just the hand, and I'll get to that one in a tick. But what I'm going to do is use some UV resin, first of all, to get the LED in place. Okay, so I'm just going to dunk the LED in the resin and sort of roughly try and position it where I want, and hit it with the UV. Okay, so now I need to sort of wrap these around, and because I've got too much wire here, so I think what I need to do is get a little bit of resin on this just to pin it down. And then sort of double back on itself a little bit. Alright, now I think the final thing for me to do is to try and get some resin down in there, so it's going to sort of work to insulate the connectors there with the pogo pin, but also it's going to help just to hold it in place. Okay, so that's kind of how it's going to look, and then we've got the other connector will be inside the arm. We'll hook up like that and have the power continue up through the arm. So I've drilled out the end hole here of the lower arm so that it will fit. So I need to solder up some wires to the other end and get that in place, and also do the same thing for the just the hand that won't have any lighting or anything. Right, time to check on some progress that I've made off camera. I have stuck a styrene tube with the magnetic pogo pin inside it and the wires coming out the back. Now for this one I put a bit of UV resin in there just to sort of insulate the wires and hold it in place, and you may be able to see I used some just scrap styrene just to build it up to a particular level so I could glue it in place. And what I did was I set it up with the gun arm, just make sure there was a good connection, and let the glue set while that was in place. The reason for that is because obviously I want a really good sort of connection, and so I want to make sure that the you know, the connection was flush. Okay, so that just comes off like that, and then the other hand, now of course this doesn't have any electronics in it, but it's using the same magnetic pogo pin. It now just snaps into place, and if I put the outer arm on with the two halves together, you can sort of see hand has no problem swiveling. Take that out, put this one in, just snaps in place. So what that means is I'm going to test it just to make sure the LED still works before I glue the gun together. Okay, you can see that works. The flashing is just because it's hard for me to get a good solid connection with the magnet wire. Okay, so now I know that all works. The next thing is to basically glue these two halves together. I don't want to seal this one up yet because I need to work out what I'm doing for the joint up this end first. So it's just going to be the gun hand, and I'm going to use some glue tack here. I'm just going to use some Revell contactor. Try and get this on camera for you. I like using this stuff just because it's a little bit thicker. So I'm getting plenty on the edge. Get all around that edge. Okay, and then we should be able to drop this on. If we get it on reasonably straight. It's going to be a lot of seam cleanup on this one. There is a little bit of play in the pins. They do have location pins, but there's a little bit of play in them. So you just do need to make sure that you've sort of got everything lined up as best you can. It won't be perfect, of course, because this is an older kit, but let's just try and get that without as much of a step as possible. Alright, I will let that sit and dry for a good length of time before I start on the cleanup side of things. Alright, now I'm happy with the way the hand connects to the lower arm. I need to work out how to connect the elbow. Now the way it currently works is we've got this upper section which has this little hinge bit, if I get that all together. And these bits here used to be joined to this part, so I've since sort of snipped them off. But the problem with that is it was a bit strange where the sort of elbow worked. So what I want to do is basically replace this middle piece with something that's a little bit better for an elbow joint. I purchased some of these what they call ball joints from AliExpress. This is SBJ001. Okay, and you can see from the diagram all they are. They're not really, I wouldn't call them ball joints. They're just sort of like elbow joints. And so I've put one together here. I haven't put the cap piece on solidly yet because it's going to be easier for me to thread the wire through without it, I think. So I might just take that out for now. So these are just sort of two components that lock in together and just create a nice joint. And this set comes with several different sort of sizes. So you get ones that are sort of 8mm diameter, 10mm diameter and 12mm diameter. So these are the 10mm diameter, which is sort of the closest I've got to matching the size of the existing part. Alright, so the next bit is to work out how to attach this so I can basically pull it all apart, paint it, all that sort of thing, and also run wires through it, which I probably should have thought about before wiring up the arm to, for lighting the gun. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these poly caps, which I've got out of another kit. Don't ask me which kit it came out of because I basically cut out all the polycap pieces from all the kits I build and sort of put them in this parts box. I've also got lengths of sprue because sometimes this stuff's really good for if you've got an axle or something where you want it to be a bit tighter, you can use the polycap material. I find that's a bit better. So don't ask me which kit it's come from, I have no idea. But the plan is to seat this in here, and I'm going to have to thread the wires through it. Alright, and I will locate it in here. So somewhere in there. So I do need to trim the pegs a little bit on it. So I'm working out whether to sort of seat it in place there or to seat it back a little bit so that the ball joint part sort of comes in a little bit. I think I might do it back. Problem with doing this is I really need to work out how to thread the wires through here first so that I can sort of set it all up. And I think what I'll do is drill a hole all the way through. Who would have thought drilling into some plastic would be a nightmare? I don't know what sort of plastic they've used for this, but it's tough stuff. So just using a pin vise, I couldn't actually drill a hole down the guts of one of the pins. So I ended up having to use the old Proxon at about 20,000 RPM just to get the drill to cut through. And I don't know how well it's going to come out in camera, but I've drilled a 0.7mm hole down the guts of the pin there, and I've also cut a little slot there. The hole needs to go all the way through the middle into that inner area because it's going to come up and then into the other piece. So if we can get these two wires in, so that is a start. Alright, now I'm going to try and thread them through this other piece. Now one thing that I had to do was I had to cut this middle peg down. If you have a look at, here's one that I haven't cut, you can sort of see the difference there. And the reason for that is because if I left it at this height, the wires have got sort of nowhere to go going into the other piece. So it would completely block off that area there and wouldn't allow the wire to go through. So that's why I've cut it down. It gives me a bit of space in there that I can thread it through the other side. Alright, now this hole is going to be a pain in the neck because I have to go in from the other side. Oh, success. Alright, one through. Hopefully that makes it easier for the second one. At least I know where I'm aiming for. If anyone knows of a support group out there for people who can't help themselves but to add lights to model kits when they probably shouldn't, let me know. I'll need to join in a hurry. Alright, I think we might finally be there. Okay, alright. So I'm not sure how much of that you're going to see, but basically that's going to allow for the joint to work. Obviously, it's not a joint that should be manoeuvred regularly. We now have a joint where the wires go through, and of course we'll have a poly cap at this end, a poly cap on the other end, and we should be good to go. So what I'm going to do next is set up the poly caps for this end and also for the larger side, and then I'll come back and show you how I've sort of done that. Alright, welcome to Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory, where I am building a monster. This is what I've done with the arm so far, and keep in mind this is only one of them. I've got to go through all this again with the other arm, which is slightly different. So let me take you through what I've done, but I am kind of happy with the amount of extra rotation I'm going to get at the elbow joint. So it's going to be close to 90 degrees. It probably won't be quite 90 degrees, but that's a lot more motion than what it was going to have previously. If I straighten this out, that's what it's sort of going to look like, you know, on the other side of it. It isn't Canon, keeping in mind that this was the original piece that sort of goes there, but had no sort of, or very limited rotation, whereas this is going to be a lot better. And of course I've had to account for the fact that there's wires going through it as well. So what I've done is, if I dissect this one bit at a time, we've got a poly cap. So again, this is just out of my bits box. I've got a couple of bits of styrene with a 3mm hole, a 3mm diameter hole drilled out on both sides there, and I've stuck that in. And what that'll do is that'll allow me to stick it to this other bit of styrene that I'll put in here, using just styrene cement. So that'll give it a good solid base. It won't actually rotate much, this particular part, but that's all right. I want all the rotation to happen here. So that's what I've sort of done for that bit. I just do need to sort of glue this in place, which I'll do in a minute. Then if I take the elbow joint out, I don't want to be doing this too often because it will be putting stress on the wires. I do not want them to break. Alright, so at this end I've used another poly cap, the one I showed before. Again, there's a couple of bits of styrene with 3mm holes for each side of the poly cap to hold in place, and then I've just packed it with scrap styrene around just to basically hold it in place. It doesn't need to rotate or anything like that, it just needs to be stuck in place. So that means now I can go ahead and start sort of gluing these halves together. So I've spent quite a bit of time working out how I'm going to try and get this pauldron or shoulder part in place, and it's been driving me a bit up the wall. So I want to show you some of the failures that I've done, and then talk about my third option. So the first idea I had was to take the existing hinge and put some magnets in it that would correspond with the magnets in the shoulder piece, so like that. Okay, so when I put this together, and just a spoiler alert, this is not the way I'm going to go because it has some issues. If I get this together. So the way that would have worked is I could have actually taken this piece out. So imagine that this is attached to the rest of the arm. I could have folded this in and then it would have been ready to go to attach to the body. Now there's a couple of problems with that. One is that I didn't think about the fact that if I've got this attached to the arm and then I put it back into this shoulder piece, when I go to push it into the body part, it's not gonna give me enough leverage to push it in properly. So this idea failed for a number of reasons. One is because it's using the magnets is not going to work. I cut out this bit of sprue here. This is a 3mm diameter sprue, and I drilled a hole through it and I was ready to have the wire sort of come out the other side. You can see I had an issue where it actually broke. So yeah, this was an abject failure. But while I was on that kind of mindset, I learned a few things. So I took, this is version 2. So I took another one of these joints from this set I got, and I glued some magnets to it like this. So I thought, oh well, at least I don't have the joint issue, you know, where it's broken and it's a bit more stable. But I didn't think at the time I'm going to have the same issue of trying to get it in place on the body once the arm's assembled. So basically this would work the same way. I was going to add a thicker bar to it, probably from the original one, so it attaches to the body properly, but essentially I was going to have the same issue. So it kind of works. It was just thinking about the assembly, so thinking ahead, I was going to run into issues. Now the magnets that I used, if you're interested, they're 2mm by 2mm diameter magnets, and they actually fit in these holes really well. A bit too well. They're a bit of a snug fit. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to sort of show you not only my stuff ups, but also what I'm going to do to get these magnets out. And I'm going to have to come in from the other side, so I'm going to have to drill them out. And this works for any piece that's sort of captured in a, in a hole like this on a plastic piece. What you do is you can drill from the other side, and it's going to be hard to work out exactly where it needs to be, but you can always go back and putty up the hole that you're drilling. So it's not sort of the end of the world if you're drilling into the piece that you're going to see. Now thankfully I didn't glue these pieces in. I didn't glue the magnets in, so I'm hoping have I actually got the right spot there? I can't tell. And that's one of the problems with these sort of round surfaces. Feels like it's through, but now I'm just using a 1mm drill bit here. Obviously the smaller the drill bit the better, because it's a lot less of a hole to sort of patch up. Alright, I reckon that's through. Oh, I missed. So I'm going to have 2 holes to patch up, so you can sort of see the hole there. I came out, so I need to go in that direction. So I might have a few holes, but it's the only way for me to get the magnet out. And the reason I need to get the magnet out is because I want to put in a proper axle. So it's sort of the only way I'm going to be able to do this properly so it works. Now the good news is, with all this stuffing around, is that I'm going to have all my issues sort of sorted out before I get onto, this arm. So this arm will be assembled in a very similar way. It's not going to have the magnetized, swapping out of the hand or anything like that, but it is going to be very similar modifications I need to make. All right, I'm going to take an old airbrush needle here, so don't worry, it is an old one. I'm going to punch that, and you know what, I reckon there we go. Okay, we have the magnet out, which means that I can use that hole to set up a axle for it. All right, and again, there we go. So that one was a lot more successful than the other. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and putty up these holes, but at least the magnets are free. So, sometimes you've sort of got captured pieces when you're building these types of kits, and if you need to, if it's too hard to sort of try and extract them from one side, drill a hole from the other to push them out, and then just putty up the hole. Okay, so anyway, the next step is to essentially take one of these joint pieces, but I want to create an axle so that's a lot sturdier. So there'll be an axle go from one side to the other. There'll be sort of one of these types of joints in here that will be attached to the axle, and it will have a hole in one of these pegs that will allow the wire to sort of come out and through the outside, so then I can feed it into the body. Now, one thing I will have to do is take this failure bit, and I'm going to use this piece here because that I know fits really well into the body, the poly cap that sort of sits in the shoulder. So I'm going to use that and attach it to sort of one of these pegs on one of these joints. Try and work out how to do that. You can see the poly cap sort of in here with the wire going through it, so that's what I'm aiming for one of these joints to sort of go in there, and then this bit be attached to the shoulder. Alright, I think I have a winner. I think I've sorted out finally how to attach the shoulder piece. So let me take this out so I can show you in a bit more detail. So I've taken one of these sort of smaller joints, elbow joints, and this is just a bit of 2.5mm styrene tube. Goes through as the axle. I have drilled out the holes where the magnets originally were, so they're 2.5mm, and the axle sort of fits in like so. Now it's a little bit looser now, I will have to glue it because it wasn't quite 2.5mm. I suspect it was actually a imperial measurement diameter tube. So I've got that there, and then there is this is the original piece, and that sort of slides on, and I'll glue that in place, and that's what will attach to the body. Now, as far as getting the wires through, what I've done is I've drilled a hole, it's a 1mm hole sort of on an angle, and when I feed the wires through, you'll see what I mean by an angle, because once the wires are sort of through into the shoulder piece, they're not going to be seen, so there's no point me trying to thread it all the way through the hinge piece. Okay, so the wires sort of hold, if I can hold this up, so there's enough meat there that will go into the poly cap in the upper arm, and then it comes out here, so that basically that can just feed straight into the side of the body. So what that means is that now I can start gluing all the two halves together, because I've sort of got it all finalized. I think I know what I want to do. So I'll get the the axle sort of glued in on here. I'll get the other halves glued on the lower and the upper arm, and then I can sort of show you how it all looks. I can't believe how much time I've spent on just one arm of this kit. Alright, I'm pretty happy with the way the arms come up. Definitely a lot more angle in that elbow joint now. I can actually hold that gun sort of straight out as opposed to down like that. So you'd have to have the whole arm sort of tilted up. It was a bit strange looking. So I've got a little bit more movement there, which is nice. Obviously the gun can now swap out with just the regular hand. And we've got the wires going all the way through up the top of the shoulder here, which will obviously go in the body. Now you can see I still haven't puttied these holes I made. I still need to clean up all these seams, but at least you've got an idea of sort of where I'm at with one of the arms. And then what I'll do is off camera, I'll go ahead and do the wiring for the other arm. So I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to have an orange LED in here for the weapon. The joint here, and you can sort of see that's the maximum that it can bend, so it's not really that much. So once I put one of those sort of other replacement joints in there, I should get a bit more of an angle in that arm. So replace that. Everything else will be pretty much the same. Obviously the only difference is that I don't have to have a swap out piece. I think for the hand though, I think I probably will use magnets for that, just because the mechanism here, it's not it's not great. I mean, it holds in place, but I think it's just going to be easier if I, put a magnet in there, magnet on here, and then this piece can be sort of painted as one whole unit and then just knocked in nice and easy without it sort of scratching into the existing paint. So the shoulders mechanism is going to work the same, but essentially, I'm going to do this arm the same way that I did this one. Finished cleaning up the seams on these pieces for the arms. So you can see that's where I drilled the holes to get the magnet out, and I've had to rescribe obviously some of these panel lines that go over the join. A little bit rough in places, maybe a little bit more work, but I'll wait until I've primed it to sort of see what repair work I need to do. And of course this is the lower arm. So those joins have all been cleaned up, and also on the gun. And again, until I get a primer on, I won't see how well my cleanup work has gone. There is a big gap along the top of here. I think it's actually a design feature. I think it's supposed to be there, but I've taken it out. I've filled it with some black super glue that you can see in there. So I've taken it out just to give it a bit more of a smoother appearance. So anyway, clean that one up. I've also done the other arm. So this of course is the same deal with the new elbow joint, and the construction of it was exactly the same as the other arm. The only difference is the hand or gun lower arm, whatever you want to call it. So for this I have magnetized the claw part of it, so you just see a magnet in there and that just drops in, and it also allows for it to rotate. The other thing is I've got an LED in there, so if I just attach a battery to it, you get an idea of how that's going to look. Okay, now of course the wires do feed through the the elbow joint and into the upper arm and out here into the body, just like the other arm. So I've spent a lot of time just working on the arms of this kit. So I'm going to leave this video here, and until the next video in the series, I'll catch you later.